All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, honestly deeply chilling story that perfectly illustrates what happens when the relentless, cold logic of modern science violently collides with ancient, dormant horrors. We're going to break down the terrifying events unfolding in the cursed village of Berhampur. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're going to trace the converging mysteries of a legendary group of supernatural entities, an impossible scientific deadline, and a mystical emerald liquid that might just bridge the gap between life and death. You're definitely going to want to pay close attention to how these seemingly totally separate storylines crash into each other. So to really grasp the stakes here, we've got to look at the ground reality of Berhampur. Picture this. It's a Saturday night, and a local youth named Madan is just eager to meet up with his friends. Now, his father gave him strict, fearful warnings that a very specific evil roams the village on Saturday nights. But you know how it is? Madan ignores him and ventures out into the misty woods anyway. And then he hears it. Heavy footsteps. A rhythmic, ominous chant starts echoing through the trees. Bum, bum, bush. Bum, bum, bush. Madan tries to hide in the bushes, absolutely terrified, remembering the one rule his father gave him. Whatever you do not look at them. Now, what exactly is this threat? I mean, we aren't just talking about your run-of-the-mill ghosts here. According to local lore, these entities are known as the Nishir Molo. They're a legendary group of 4 terrifying men who literally wander through the night carrying a coffin on their shoulders. And the absolute non-negotiable rule of surviving the Nishir Molo is this. If they catch you, or worse, if you make eye contact with them, there's 0 chance of survival. It is an inescapable death sentence. And unfortunately for Madan, hiding there in the bushes, he makes the fatal mistake of opening his eyes to look. And yeah, that brings us to the grim aftermath. When Madan doesn't come home, his frantic father searches the forest the very next morning. He finds Madan dead under a banyan tree, but it's not just the fact that he died. It's exactly how he's found. His face is frozen in this state of absolute terror, eyes wide with an unspeakable horror. For the villagers, and really for us analyzing this, it's definitive proof. The lore of the Nishir Molo isn't just some campfire story to scare kids. It is a deadly, active reality haunting the village borders. I love this part because it brilliantly sets up our central conflict. On one hand, we've got the grim reality of Berhampur. Ancient curses, terrifying omens, and deadly Saturday nights where just stepping outside means death. But simultaneously, hundreds of miles away in Delhi, we have a completely different objective. We're talking lab tests, impending scientific deadlines, and a deep-rooted skepticism of literally anything supernatural. It's like looking at 2 completely different planets operating on entirely different roles. But, as you'll see, they are about to intersect in a pretty catastrophic way. So let's shift gears and head over to the city to see how this all connects. Meet our researchers, Meghna and Ishita. They work in a Delhi laboratory and are currently facing immense, crushing pressure. Their boss, Professor Jaidev, has given them a strict 3-day deadline to formulate a really complex antidote. They're desperate, and honestly, it's exactly this desperation that drives Ishita to start blurring the lines between hard science and meth. Looking for literally any possible lead, she turns to an ancient book of folklore and legends just to find some inspiration for their chemical formulas. So what exactly does she find in this old book? Well, she stumbles upon a reference to something called the Mrityunjay Amrit. This is an incredibly rare, mythical emerald green liquid that's rumored to have extreme healing properties. We're talking the ability to extend life itself. According to the text, this elixir drips from the branches of one very specific ancient tree, and it only happens on full moon nights. Now, for scientists desperately trying to synthesize a life-saving antidote, the promise of this liquid, even if it's born from myth, is just way too tempting to ignore. But here's where the science takes a super personal, honestly disturbing turn. When Ishita shows Meghna the illustration of this specific tree in the book, Meghna just freezes. She realizes that the tree right there on the page perfectly matches a recurring, absolutely terrifying nightmare she keeps having. A nightmare where a massive, horrifying bird chases her through a dark forest right up to a tree dripping with thick, green liquid. Actually, scratch that. She isn't just researching a myth anymore. She realizes this ancient text is actively mapping out her own nightmares. I mean, that terrifying realization, that's all the motivation they need. The book points them straight to the village of Berhampur. They take a 5-hour bus ride from the bustling city of Delhi, but the literal moment they step through the ancient gates of Berhampur, the environment itself seems to violently react to them. The bright, sunny weather instantly vanishes. The sky just plunges into this unnatural darkness, and a severe, howling windstorm kicks up out of nowhere. It's as if the village's very atmosphere is actively trying to reject these outsiders. Despite the ominous welcome, they push forward. But they're smart. They know they can't just stroll into a deeply traditional village and ask to harvest some mythical, sacred elixir. So they come up with a cover story. They completely hide their true objective and claim they're just university students conducting an academic study on 5 local villages. And you know what? This deception actually works. They manage to gain the trust of the mukhia, the village chief, who kindly offers them a place to stay in his own home. But you know the village's spiritual defenses? They absolutely know these outsiders are there. The exact moment Meghna and Ishita cross the threshold into the chief's home, the sacred lamp in the local temple inexplicably blows out. For the village priest, who's right in the middle of conducting his prayers, this is a horrific sign. He knows this isn't just a random draft of wind. In their culture, this signifies that a profound darkness has just entered their sanctuary. The protective barriers of the village are already beginning to fail. Meanwhile, inside the chief's house, the girls meet Anuj, the chief's son, and his attitude perfectly captures the tragic irony of his character. He literally asks them, "What can you possibly find in our stupid village?" Anuj represents the younger generation, right? He's modern, he's skeptical, and he's completely disconnected from the very real, very deadly curses that his elders are terrified of. He just thinks his village is boring, completely unaware of the supernatural powder keg he's sitting on. But actually, Anuj's skepticism gives our researchers a completely unexpected opportunity. When they press him for any quote-unquote historical sites for their fake research, he mentions the 400-year-old abandoned palace of King Suraj Ban. Meghna and Ishita realize that asking to go straight into the dangerous forest to find a mythical tree might blow their cover entirely, so pivot time. As a change of plans, they decide to investigate this abandoned palace first, completely unknowingly, redirecting themselves straight into a historical trap. Okay, the sequence of events that night, it is a total recipe for disaster. At 9 p.m., the village safely locks its doors and goes to sleep, fearing the dark. Standard procedure. But by midnight, Anuj, who's basically just trying to impress the city girls, sneaks them out into the pitch black, right into the teeth of that severe, unnatural windstorm that's been raging since they arrived. By 12:15 a.m., they've reached the massive, imposing ruins of King Suraj Ban's palace, and they force their way inside through a jammed ancient window. Now, what happens once they get inside the palace completely flips the narrative on its head. As they walk through these dusty, ruined corridors, Meghna is suddenly overwhelmed by a severe sense of déjà vu. She looks at the architecture, the specific layout of the halls, and realizes she recognizes it. She feels as though she has physically walked these exact halls before. I mean, think about it. How is it possible that a modern city researcher has memories of a 400-year-old abandoned palace? Her connection to this village is clearly so much deeper than just a simple nightmare. And while Meghna is having this total reality crisis, literally all hell is breaking loose outside. The exact moment the researchers infiltrate the palace, that terrifying chant, "Bam Bam Bosh," suddenly begins echoing through the sleeping village again. The temple priest sprints to the chief's home in an absolute panic. The terrifying realization sets in for everyone. The Nishir Molo, the deadly coffin bearers who had been completely dormant and asleep for years, have suddenly awakened. The arrival of the outsiders has officially triggered the curse. Because the threat? It's immediate. Out at the very edge of the dark forest, 2 local men, Sampat and Kopta, who had foolishly stayed out late to gamble, wrong place, wrong time, right? They suddenly find themselves surrounded. Through the howling wind, the 4 red-eyed figures step right out of the shadows, that heavy wooden coffin resting on their shoulders. The gamblers are completely cornered. The inescapable death sentence of the Nishir Molo is standing right in front of them. And that brings us to this absolutely incredible, heart-stopping duel climax. Talk about cinematic timing. In the palace, Meghna, Ishita, and Anuj suddenly hear heavy footsteps echoing in the empty ruins, and right in front of them, an ancient, mysterious door slowly begins to creak open. At that exact same second, out in the forest, the heavy lid of the Nishir Molo's coffin slides open in front of the gamblers, and a blood-curdling scream rips through the night sky, loud enough for the entire terrified village to hear. So we're left just staring at this massive intersection of science, myth, and pure terror. We've got to ask ourselves, who or what opened that door in the abandoned palace right as Meghna remembered her past? And what horrifying entity was waiting inside that coffin to claim the lives of those gamblers? But most importantly, how in the world are all of these awakenings tied to the Mrityunjay Amrit, that emerald elixir that brought the researchers here in the very first place? It's a brilliant setup that leaves us completely hooked, proving for sure that some ancient stones should probably never be overturned. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this breakdown gave you a clear picture of the chilling forces at play.